Hi all on Play Chess and streaming to YouTube. So this is the Tuesday Kingscrusher radio show. Carrying on the series of the best of the best. We're looking at a different time period now, 1910 to 1919. So part 1 of 4. We're going to have a look at a few games on Play Chess and streaming to YouTube. So this is the Tuesday. We're going to have a look at a few games from this period which considers more outstanding, you could say flashy games of this period, 1910 to 1919. So the first one is Levitsky against Marshall. So this is called the gold coin game. Let's have a look at this game. So Marshall was playing black. Let's take it from black's perspective. Okay, so d4 from Levitsky. Let's actually add the live book and Kibitzer as well. Okay, so Marshall plays e6. This is quite a flexible first move. I mean, it can invite the French defence. It's something Botvinnik used as well, because he didn't mind either playing the French defence, and sometimes he didn't mind after c4 playing the Dutch defensive c4, the Dutch. That was Botvinnik. But yeah, you can play just e6 to d4. White does actually play e4, so we go into a French defense now position after d5. Now we have knight c3. Now usually the main move is the Winoir variation with bishop b4. What was played by Marshall was actually all knight f6 is popular, or even taking. What was played is actually less popular than any of these moves, even h6, a6, c6, b6, unless I've missed it, g6. What was played was actually less popular than any of these moves. Even f5 has been played 4 times in my book. The move played by Marshall was actually c5. And probably the reason it isn't that popular is white can actually, it seems a strange actually sort of gambit. White played knight f3, kind of bypassing the virtual gambit here. Let's have a quick look. E takes, just trying to win a pawn. Well, let's say d takes, we are hitting d5. This position is a little bit odd. It's not entirely clear how black actually gets his pawn back. You might think it's sort of standard. It's not really that standard. But anyway, this possibility was kind of ignored. White played knight f3, and we have knight c6. And I think we're transposing now. If e5, that would be transposing into more common territory. We have e takes here, and in this position now, this is more interesting for black than before. If white tries to win a pawn, I think there's some compensation going on with the check here. Well, it's a kind of weird gambit, but white might be technically a bit better. Anyway, that was ignored. Just bishop e2, knight f6, and now black seems to have a perfectly okay position in some respects coming up here. Now it is a kind of gambit in this position. Knight d4. This might be an inaccuracy, maybe even knight a4, just trying to hold on to the pawn. This might actually be okay for white, slightly okay, slightly better. But instead we have knight d4. And this now does help black activate his pieces as well as get the pawn back. So Frank Marshall gets his pawn back, and not only that, gets some active pieces here. His isolated queen's pawn is being transformed. Black has some potential on the f file here now, which is interesting. Tactical potential on the f file. That rook's been automatically kind of developed. We have bishop g4. That pawn's just protected. Bishop drops back. Rook a e8. Queen d2. Now black is actually in the driving seat here. He plays actually bishop b4. Maybe also just h6 is okay. It's quite interesting for black, this position. There's pressure on f2 clearly, and black's got an easy plan just to double the rooks. That's fine as well, this h6. In fact, you know, bishop here, g5. This position is fine for black. There's a threat of g4 potentially. It's pretty dangerous anyway for white. So alright, but bishop b4 was played. White took on f6 and now played rook ad1. Again, maybe kicking this bishop might be a small improvement. If this should be about equal, this position here, funny enough, but that wasn't played. That wasn't played. Rook ad1. We have queen c5. Black is again in a very dominating position now. Queen e2. Bishop takes. Queen takes c3. Which seems to, well, it does kind of allow, black didn't need to do this, it does seem to allow rook takes d5 using the pin. Now we have knight d4. Now probably white should, to stay in the game, queen e4 keeps the pin, and it's quite interesting here. Tactically, this holds the balance. Queen e4, it seems. If rook f4, maybe that looks interesting for knight e2 check. If queen takes f4, there's knight e2 check. But queen e5 here, and yeah, it's not clear. It seems it's okay actually. It's okay. White's doing okay apparently here with good play. He should be able to hold balance. But we have actually, instead of queen e4, we have this offside move, queen h5, looking at the rook like that. And you might wonder, well, what's the point of this? Perhaps he was expecting a move like, well, if g6, yeah, we play queen e5, renewing that pin there. But black actually more naturally kind of doubled the rooks anyway here, even though he's without the bishop. This pressure looks somewhat ominous in this position. White played rook e5. And this is just really a winning position here, actually. Black's doing really well in this position. With just rook takes f2. This is just really quite crushing. You know, basically, if takes, then there's not queen here, obviously, but queen here. And that's like mating. So rook takes f2 does set a lot of problems. But here we have rook h6, which is another very strong move. Queen g5, and now we're getting to this classic position, which is really well known, because black here played a tactic now to try and exploit the quirky configuration here of the queen and king. Can you see the move black played in this position? Black's play, and we get to a very, very famous position, which I'm hoping probably most of you have seen. So black to play here, what would you play with black? Any ideas? So tactically it looks like a strange configuration, right? Forcing moves. Okay, so it's rook takes h3. Give yourself a few points if you found that. So the basic idea, if takes, then we have knight f3 check and we win the queen, right? But now I'm pretty sure most of you might have seen this. It's such a classic game. Rook c5 was played here. So the point of this is, well, what is the point? Say black did a normal looking move. Well, yeah, there's a very, very big dramatic point to this. I'm trying to find a move which doesn't sort of win, actually. That's a bit tricky to find a move that doesn't actually win. There's a lot of moves that are still winning after rook c5, but what is played is absolutely beautiful anyway. Basically. So can you guess black's move here? It's very well known. Position. So it's a classic move. Black play and get loads of gold coins from all the spectators. So what move would you play to get loads of gold coins and become a total immortal iconic chess position, which should have a t-shirt for it or a cake made for it? So it's a totally iconic move here by Frank Marshall, who was the US champion for a number of years. In fact, this is so classic. It's like you know, if you live in London, you don't go to the tourist places. Wherever you live, you don't go to the tourist places. It's so classic, you don't really want to try and revisit this game, or you know, too many times. If it's just like a landmark you take for granted, a landmark game that you just don't visit too much. But okay, the move is Queen G3. Yeah. It is a stunner. So Frank Marshall clearly he looks at outrageous looking moves to find this. It does seem to win in every single variation. White just resigned here, but let's have a look at the variations. Let's recap. So first of all, he's threatening mate with queen takes h2 if you have another move. If queen takes g3, let's have a look at this first. Check. Then we've got a nasty pin here, 2 pins. Now, if that's taken, then that's mate. And if it's not taken, then this is sufficient to be a piece up, this position, with rook c3 as an example. Good piece up there. So, yeah. So that was on FG. Okay. So that was on queen takes g3. On h takes, that's quite simple actually. Knight e2 is checkmate. Yeah. Escape squares are taken. On f takes, then that's a mate in 2 check, and rook takes f1. Yeah. And let's have a look at some other alternatives. Well, are there any, basically? We could try and parry the mate on h2, I guess, with this sort of move. That at least parries the mate in 2, right? This would be a mistake, yeah, because queen takes. No, it'd still be better for black actually. even this one, actually, even here, black's better. Funny enough, this is a mysterious new opportunity to look at something not seen before. That even this position is better slightly for black, but that's ridiculous. There's a much stronger one to be more refuting queen e5. There's simply knight f3 or knight e2 check. So knight f3, and we're still leading to mate. Bang, rook takes h2, mate. Or knight e2 check, yeah, and that's still mate there. In fact, yeah. So knight, it's fatal. Once the king's on h1, you can play rook takes and avoid this whole thing altogether. I only threw out queen e5 just as an idea. So you know, if we look at other, I mean, there's nothing basically. Queen e5, okay, that's mentioned. F takes are mentioned. There's nothing much really to talk about here. It's over. Okay. Now hang on. There's an evacuation. We can play on the evacuation. We can just do this, and then funny enough, the knight is guarding the escape square. Queen h1 is checkmate. Now there's no getting away from checkmate in a lot of these lines. In fact, there's also this one. Queen takes f2 there as well. So yeah, queen g3 happens to be pretty fatal. And thankfully I thought of something original to say about this on this revisit. That I once won Lloyds Bank Junior in 1989, so I beat a few people higher rated, but I had this philosophy at the time I called using the best resources on squares around the opponent's king. And I've just realised this is just this realisation now that this sort of move will definitely tick that box. You're just basically using your best resources, you're throwing them near to the opponent's king. So even if they can be taken, it seems, you can checkmate the opponent's king on this particular occasion. So maybe I was onto something back in 1989. That's quite some time ago, but I was definitely onto something, maybe ahead of my time now, and I need to revisit it. So maybe when you're playing a game of chess, just see how you can just literally get your best resources on squares around the opponent's king. Yeah. Who would have thought? Queen g3. It's simple as that. Chess is so simple if you look at it like that. It just so happens it just creates lots of nasty pins and forcing sequences that win in every single variation. Okay, so let's go on to another game. So that's an iconic game. So apparently the spectators showered the board with gold coins. Okay, now here's another one which is a real classic. And I was reading recently that Sir George Alan Thomas was on the receiving end. Oh, sorry, I don't want to spoil the game. But he was involved in a number of brilliancies, basically. And he may not have won all of the brilliancies. So he was quite famous being on the receiving end, actually. Probably the most famous on the receiving end of things. George Alan Thomas. I don't know why that would be. Is he somewhat provocative with his king safety? He lived to a grand old age of 91, actually, George Alan Thomas. He died the year of the Fischer-Spassky match, 1972. So he was born back in 1881 and maybe got to see a bit of the Fischer-Spassky match, July 23rd, 1972 in the UK. So, yeah, I mean, he got to play, without a doubt, George Thomas is, by the way, since we're talking about him here, against Edward Lasker, not Emmanuel Lasker, not one of the world champions, but Edward Lasker. But let's talk about George Thomas for a moment, because this is such an iconic game. I'd like to at least get some bio that I never sort of maybe read before. So George Thomas's great achievement, the guy playing with the black pieces here, was his tie for first place at Hastings, 1934-35. It's that because Hastings is usually played in December, it goes into the new year. So that's why you sometimes see Hastings spread across 2 years here. So apparently he tied for first 22 years after this game with Max Erver and Salomon Floor, finishing ahead and beating both Capablanca and Botvinnik. So this guy that's being on the receiving end, can you believe it? Does everyone know that? That he has actually beaten both Capablanca and Botvinnik. I mean, actually, I just to get a new angle on this, I think we should go over those games because I don't think everyone overlooks. I mean, actually, it comes as a bit of a surprise here to read this in his bio. We should check those games out, just as a side for this game. Because, frankly, I'm fed up of people quoting this game and how brilliant Edward Lasker was. And he wasn't even Emmanuel Lasker. And no one ever goes on about George Thomas's wins. They just go on about this game. Sorry, I don't want to be a tension spoiler about the result, but this game, they keep applauding this game, and they don't talk about him beating Capablanca or Botvinnik, do you? I mean, you might have not known that. Yeah, it's just not on. It's just not on. Why are certain people just designated as these people that just on the receiving ends of brilliancies? But they played some brilliant games themselves. I mean, the most notable one is probably Anderson Kierzewski, poor guy. He had some brilliant games as well. Yeah. But anyway, okay, let's go on to this game. Let's go on to this game. This is even a casual game. It wasn't even part of a tournament. These casual games are so punishing in history. Okay, so it was a casual game. He was just mucking around, yeah, clearly. So D4, E6. And you can tell he's mucking around because, he plays F5, the Dutch defence, yeah? I mean, seriously, it's a casual game, right? Yeah, just play the Dutch defense. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so knight c3, knight f6, you know, bishop g5. So Edward Lasker, bishop e7. Okay, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, e4. Clearly, this is going to be dangerous already. It looks pretty dangerous. Okay, you could argue. Let's be fair. Black's got the bishop here. Yes, it's just incurring a loss of time now, which could be really dangerous. So f takes e4, knight takes e4, and this seems a bit laborious to try and do something with this bishop over here to put it on the diagonal. So it's another loss of time. Oh, blimey, what's happening here? It's another loss of time. Sorry, pardon me. While white's knights spring into action, knight e5. Okay, black castles here. Bishop d3. And black actually is in good shape here. Yeah, he doesn't have to be that worried. He's not playing against Emmanuel Lasker. He's in good shape. He could actually get rid of most of the pressure here, you know, by taking here on e5, and then knight c6, and then where's white's attack? Where's white's attack? Nowhere. There's no attack here. White's actually worse in this position. In fact, you know, this is the logical thing to do. You know, what does white actually do here? White's just technically worse. He's losing the e5 pawn. Yeah, there's no compensation. It's not very good anyway. It doesn't look very good to me. The engines hate it for white anyway. So anyway, he should have played that, but he didn't. He played bishop b7. And now things are getting a bit too late to do anything after queen h5. It's another case of simply saying, okay, what are your best resources? Well, the queen is one of the best resources. These guys, they're near the squares of the opponent's king. Just fling them near to the opponent's king. But in this case, it is kind of justified because the defensive knight at some cost has been removed. So this is a greater soft spot than usual. And in fact, here I think bishop takes e5. This is weird. This is very weird. This is extremely weird. This variation. If bishop takes e5 was played here. This is a new one actually. Can you guess what white should do here to hold equality? White's play and hold equality. No, seriously, no one's going to guess this. No one's going to guess this move. This is a side note for this game because I'm sure everyone's seen this game. But bit of a side note test. White's play and try for equality here. What would you play? Are you all seeing it? Oh man, does everyone know this? Does everyone know this? Oh, this is so good. This is so good because you've got this impression of this game being so one-sided. You really think there's an attack here in this position? Really? You think there's an attack? Well done to Semir, who doesn't think there's an attack. But this is all losing, by the way. You know, knight f6, knight d2. You're mad. There's no attack. Just rook takes f6. Where's the attack? It's just completely lost for white, this position. It's completely lost. Check. King e7. The rook's coming back. Black's just better. Black's just better here. There's no attack. White has to actually fight for equality on bishop takes e5. Yeah? There's no knight g5. Just h6. Where's the attack now? No attack. No, white actually has to play knight d2 here to try and cut out this rook f5 resource and try and play for a draw. So he's threatening a mate in 3 with bishop takes. And the variation could run like this, where white's got equality at least. Equality. If knight takes d4, I think that's pushing it. As bishop takes g6. For example, this is going to be good for white. check, check, pick up that knight. So don't have to play knight takes d4. But anyway, yeah, so bishop takes e5 was the last chance. I think now black should have played bishop takes e5. He didn't. He played queen takes e7. And I'm pretty sure you've all seen this before. So the only spin-off I'm going to provide you is showing you a couple of extra games after this game related to poor George Alan Thomas. So yes, white to play. I'm sure you've seen this all before. Go on then. 200 points for finding the mate in 7. White to play. Mate in 7 is the easiest mate in 7 ever, because it's of cultural iconic significance. White to play a mate in 7. Yes, okay. It's all forcing. There's nothing impressive about finding forcing moves in chess. I just want to say that, because forcing moves by nature, you're restricting the opponent's options. There is something beautiful about it, maybe how you can go from one position to another position, a bit like maybe a space jump or something. You know, space jumps they talk about across space. You know, going through. You get from one position to drastically another via a series of absolute forcing moves. That it can be spectacular, and here is a spectacular transition, but it's all by force. So queen takes h7. How many replies? There's only one legal reply, right? Knight takes f6, double check, which means it restricts replies because it's a double check. The king can't go back because then it's a mate in 1. Knight g6 is checkmate. So the king has to go forward here. Now we have a mate in 5. Knight eg4 check, keeping guard of escape squares, bringing the king forward. The king can't go there, so king g5. Now either f4 or h4 is okay for a mate in 4. We'll go with the game continuation h4. The king goes forward. G3 check, again there's not too many replies. King f3. Bishop e2 check, there's not too many replies. King g2. Rook h2 check. King g1. And white has 2 different mates in 1. He can either castle queenside checkmate or king d2 checkmate. All the escape squares covered. But it's so iconic. Again, you know, I hate to show this game. It's just so iconic. So now, as a slight detour, okay, let's have a look at his games where he beat Capablanca and Botvinnik. Just for the record, okay? I don't care if they were really tedious. I'll speed over the tedium. Let's have a look. Put him in context. He was a good player. Let's put him in context. Yeah. So 20 years later, he was to come first in the Hastings. So 1934, that's like 22 years later. So George Alan Thomas versus Capablanca. I'm going to find the game. Let's have a quick look, just out of interest. So Thomas wins. He did lose several times to Capablanca. The score was 6-1 with 4 draws. But let's have a look at Thomas winning. It was quite a grind. But let's speed through it anyway, just to get a gist. So Hastings 1934. Playing black. Now this wasn't a casual game, so he did treat his tournament game seriously. Yeah. He didn't play the Dutch defence. So it was black against Capablanca. Hastings 1934 to 35, yeah? So December 1934. Pretty solid stuff. Solid. Let's get a gist of it. Solid. This is not the sort of game that will go on YouTube, because it's pretty dull, isn't it? B5, that interesting B5 here, undermining Capablanca's centre. I think I've seen this game before actually. I think I might have. Exchange set. Rook takes d2. Winning material. Look, nice little tactic. Nice little tactic here. Double attack. Lose pieces. Fall off. Look at that. Winning material from Capablanca. Who would have thought? Brilliant move. Rook takes d2. So Capablanca has a loose piece on b5. And that is his downfall after rook takes d2. That is Capablanca's downfall, I've got to say. Downfall. The tempo, the chess tempo, which is a famous puzzle site, is a killer in chess. It brings a cold shower to otherwise good-looking positions. Even in Morphy games, I've been finding key tempos can refute attacks. But here, it's gaining a massive tempo. Queen attacking the bishop and the rook, winning material. Is it so easy after two bishops against the, two pieces against the rook? Is it so easy? Let's have a quick look. Yes, a bit of a grind. I'm just going to fast forward it just to get a gist. Alright, Capablanca got pissed off here. No, he's actually he's got his rook trapped as well to add to his pain. He's got his rook trapped. This is a moment Capablanca's rook is trapped. Rook c4 with the threat, bishop c8 trapping the rook. The rook's been cornered. So now he's bishop down, transitioning a whole bishop down. And that's it there. Now let's have a look at the game against Botvinnik. So George Thomas against Botvinnik. Same tournament. He was having a great tournament. I think it was the same tournament. Hastings 1934-35. So same tournament. Playing with the white pieces. So George Thomas white against Botvinnik, same tournament, Hastings 1934-35. Let's have a look. Sicilian defence. Looks pretty standard stuff here. Botvinnik treats him maybe a bit of a risky move, h5 here. Let's see, knight c4. e5 supported. Now actually he's brave enough to open up Botvinnik's rook here. He takes on g4. Is there enough pressure on white's king here to justify b4? Bishop's driven off that key diagonal. Now f3. Blasted open an f-file, and he's still got a lot of pressure on e5 here. Exchange of rooks. Black doesn't seem to have a major attack. Queen e2 threatens, rook takes f7 now. Bishop c1, tempo gaining. Rook d3. Knight's going to a juicy square now, potentially. Potentially. Yes. Good dark square grip. Interesting decision here. Maybe because black's threatening knight c4, he actually gives up his dark square bishop. And black technically should be okay here. Maybe c5 is the right move. c5. But a5 was played. And this knight finds a good spot. Kicked, that fixes the black pawns. Now this knight is wriggling around to d5, it seems. That's really the threat. Knight e3 to d5. There's been he's positionally outplaying Botvinnik here. This is a clear advantage now for white. No, small to clear. It's still not completely clarified until this position. This was clearly advantageous here for white. He played a routine move, c takes. Apparently it seems queen h6 check is good here. Clearly that is not possible. And if king e8 check, and if black doesn't want to avoid the queen loss, this position is quite good for white here. Yeah, there's a few threats in this position. This will be a good pin, very good pin. This position here, I think black's approaching a very, very difficult position. But anyway, he didn't do that, but that might be promising. He just took. Okay, it's still good for white. That knight seems quite dominant here. Picks up a pawn. Has to neutralise Botvinnik's counterplay. Gets the queens off to address this queen f2. So clear pawn up now, big advantage. This last move was a mistake. Botvinnik should have played queen c1 or queen a1. So he shouldn't have allowed, unfortunately, this is move 48. He allowed the queens to come off. A clear pawn down, and the knight is also now, of course, targeting a poor innocent pawn on a light square, which is taken. So 2 pawns up. And there should be sort of technique, because 2 pawns up here. See, he ground them both down. No one cares about these games, do they? He ground them both down. And on move 60, you know, Botvinnik resigned. Yeah, so he beat both of them in the same tournament. That was his best result. Just to put his little Dutch defence casual game in context. Yeah, that was his greatest achievements. His time for first place in Hastings. So he beat both of these guys. He continued to play at a high level in later years, winning the London Championship of 1946 at age 65, before retiring from competitive chess 4 years later. In 1950, he was awarded the International Master title by FIDE. Also in other areas, he was not just restricted to chess. He won 21 British badminton titles between 1903 and 1928, and in 1922 he made it to the last 16 of the Wimbledon Tennis Championships. So quite a colourful character, yeah, not just in chess. But yeah, I think I remember writing about this on the ECF forum, that, you know, he had this amazing tournament. It was quite amazing. So beating both of these guys. So just remember that when you remember this iconic game of his little Dutch defence casual game, just remember these 2, you know, games as well. Yeah. So let's have a look at another game now. Back on track. Okay, so back on track. Capablanca against Marshall. Very, very famous game. So apparently Marshall had been preparing for years for this encounter with Capablanca. Actually, let's add a Kibitzer again, if I can. Okay, what have I done here? Add Kibitzer again. So Capablanca against Marshall. So Marshall prepared what's become known as the Marshall Gambit nowadays, but it's a version 1 of the Marshall Gambit, which, so it carries on like this: c3, d5. So this is version 1. E takes, knight takes. This is all pretty standard theory so far. But in version 1, he played knight f6. But later we know now, it seems c6 is pretty cool. c6 is pretty cool, and used by, for example, British Grandmaster, Super Grandmaster Michael Adams, to very, very solid. People avoid this Marshall Gambit now quite a lot as well. Anti-Marshall systems. But anyway, in version 1, knight f6 was played. So Capablanca played rook e1, and there's still a bit of a strong initiative here, because what's really happened fundamentally is White's lost his defensive knight, yeah, so he's got a soft spot on h2, funny enough. well, it's softer than it usually is because there's no defensive knight on f3. You could argue that. So bishop d6 points immediately at that soft spot and threatens nasties immediately. A Greek gift, maybe even bishop takes h2 is threatened. If white didn't do anything, there's an immediate Greek gift on here. Say just theoretically, you know, bishop takes h2, knight g4. The Greek gift is definitely on here. It's too dangerous, this position. There's no actual meaningful defense. Like here, for example, check. And winning the rook. So you get the idea. The Greek gift is definitely on. Anyway, so white has to be very careful. He played h3. So that's ready to refute any Greek gift. Well, it's not on basically. But it's played anyway. This knight g4, funny enough, knight g4 is played anyway. So very aggressive stuff. So Frank Marshall actually clearly using the idea again of throwing all his resources, his best resources, just simply around squares of the opponent's king, which has been weakened without the defensive knight on f3. You know, there's softer spots than usual. Queen f3 is played. Now this is interesting. Could white have gone wrong? I think d4 is also might actually be plausible. Queen h4 looks really dangerous, but queen f3 here, check. King f1. This is plausible. Yeah, it might be okay for white. Okay, that's a plausible move order anyway. So queen f3, we get that same position anyway. Virtually, we get a similar variation. d4 here. Right. So on bishop h2, king f1's the move. Not here. Let's have a quick look. Check. Check is actually winning this rook with check. So that's why that should be avoided. If this bishop h2, king f1's the move. So that's the point there. But anyway, knight takes f2 was played. And again, there's a point of hitting this loose piece, this rook, via knight takes h3 check. So Capablanca moves that rook simply to e2 here, which happens to be one of the strongest moves in the position. You might think, well, is rook f1 plausible? Funny enough, no. There's a move here which actually shows Capablanca's move to be much stronger than rook f1, because in some ways you might be attracted to rook f1 like a fly is attracted to light. You might be attracted to rook f1, but there's a move here which actually is good for black. Can you see? This is a variation. This is a black play variation. Black to play here. Actually, it's a bit tricky, but can you see what black can play here? Now, the reason I want to show you this is it's just to show you to appreciate the navigational skills of Capablanca through king safety issues or potential issues. How he navigated away from these possibilities. It seems as though either bishop takes h3 or knight takes could cause white some serious damage. So, for example, bishop takes in particular. Example: if g takes, check, and knight g5 is a double attack on the queen and threatening mate. This is a real pain, this position, because h3 is taken by the knight. What do we do here? What do we do? If rook h1, queen takes h1, knight takes f3, and black's better. It's devastation. It's absolute massacre. If rook f1, which seems quite natural, is played, it seems this is a massacre. Bishop takes h3. If queen takes f2, you might be asking, bishop g3, we gain an important tempo to still get an attack potentially on h2. If the queen moves somewhere, bishop here or here, bishop e6 might be stronger, threatening queen h2. Sorry, bishop e6. White is forced to give up the queen because this is worse. You know, check takes, and it's horrible. This is hanging as well. Black can just take here and is better, much better. So it seems that the natural rook f1. It's great that Capablanca avoided this. I suppose there's a slight claustrophobia about having the king enclosed with that rook on f1, but it does mean, you know, this threat is addressed immediately as well. The loose piece issue is addressed. Yeah. So this rook f1, it seems whatever white does, after after bishop takes h3, white's in trouble. Just to examine g3 for a moment. Just bishop takes g3. And actually there's a nasty threat in this position of bishop h2 as well. If rook takes, bishop takes here, queen g4 check. And because of this congestion stuff, it seems black plays rook a e8 here, threatening rook e2, forcing white to give up the queen with knight d2, rook e2 gives up the queen. Bishop d1 doesn't really help. I'm not really sure why even that's suggested. Is it because of this? If in this position we played bishop e3 immediately, black has a crushing blow in this position in the form of rook takes e3. Queen's overloaded, trying to protect g2 here. Yeah, so that's all pretty grim actually after rook f1. So that's the first little indication Capablanca's navigational skills away from pretty nasty forcing, well, pretty nasty aggressive stuff. So rook e2, this attack, yeah, is starting to be fended off a little bit. It carries on brutally though, with bishop g4. Okay, so this carries similar themes actually. H takes, and now if queen h1, the snag is king just eats that knight. So basically bishop g3 means queen h1 now is a mate threat, as well as queen h2, queen h1. So there's a mate in 1 and mate in 2 threat that needs to be addressed. Sorry, this is in the line. That's in the line bishop g3, which is looking dangerous. That wasn't actually played. White can actually play rook takes f2 here, but so because of that, maybe bishop h2 check was played, and with the king on f1, now bishop g3 was played. So we still get this rook takes f2. Check. The king's brought out to e2. Bishop takes f2. And it looks pretty nasty still, but we have a key defensive move, probably one of the best defensive moves in the position. It does look really, really nasty. There are numerous threats. You know, basically queen takes c1 needs to be addressed, as well as rook ae8 check. King takes f or queen takes, they both probably don't help here. Well, queen takes c1 is at least okay for black, and queen takes is even better for black. Okay, but there's a great move here now at move 21 that's played, which calms the storm significantly of the possession. Calms the storm. Can you guess? White's play to calm the storm. Calm storm. So what would you play here with white? You want to try and calm this storm. Okay, the move, if you get this, good, is bishop d2. And now we have, if the check, say a check, king could just take there, we're guarding the e1 square, that's a nice point. e1 is guard, otherwise that would be like mate, you can imagine that's like mate there. So bishop d2 showing its functionality already. So the threat is actually king takes f2 now. The bishop moves out of the way. But now queen h3. Check. And the king has got a safe place on c2. A safe square it navigates to. Yep. And it's on a light square. And black's got a dark square bishop. So on a light square. Avoiding the wrath of any dark square stuff. Bishop f2, queen f3, pin, nasty, and there's also echoing a pin here, not only pinning the bishop, but that pawn's pinned. Queen g1. Black is having difficulty making any threats now. Bishop d5. Basically, you might wonder why bishop d5. Well, it means that, well, for example, b4 and then a4 could be good. So forcefully open up the rook, because without playing b4, if we play a4, I think black might have b4 keeping the rook hemmed in. This is still quite good for white, but it's a slower process. So I think bishop d5, one of the points is to play b4, then a4, without having b4 from black. So this rook is going to be really happy with b4 and a4. As an example, h6, we can actually, yeah, I think b4 is slightly more accurate, but actually even a4 is fine. Actually, it's not such a big deal. This position, I think the rook's going to see light of day anyway. Tactically, it's already seen light of day via a3. Okay, but anyway, the point might be about this b4 a4. So bishop d5, c5. That's taken, and now we do get in this b4 and a4 business. So forcing the rook out, and it's lucky that the king's holding b1, so the rook doesn't have to attend to b1. a5, a takes. Now the wrath of the rook. The rook immediately makes its presence felt now. It's like one of those players substituted on fresh in a football game. Fresh out substitution. Now in the game, rook a6, immediately dangerous. B takes c is played. And you might wonder, well, what about this bishop here? I think if this is taken, it wasn't. I think this might be dangerous because it's a loose piece there to c5. You know, for example, like this, it's a little bit dangerous, even if it's not losing. Okay, immediately that rook. This is actually quite dangerous for white. This position. So basically, that was ignored totally, just with knight takes c3. The bishop now does move, and now b6 with the idea of b7 and rook a8. That's a wonderful use of the bishop to make b7 rook a8. Bishop's hitting in both directions here, but supporting b7 rook a8 there. Bishop takes. And now h6, b7. This is really nasty. This bishop on d5. In fact, they both look pretty good, these bishops. Rook e3. But now the final move of the game is played actually. Bishop takes f7 and black resigns. If the king moves here, it's mate in 2, check. And if here we have rook takes h6, checkmate. Ouch. Yeah. If rook takes f7, that's a mate in 5 with queening. And then we've got rook takes h6 here. And queen h8 check. And then wherever the king moves, we've got queen h5 checkmate. So, yeah, pretty nasty final move here. Bishop takes. Yep. That finishes it forcingly. Nasty move. If king h8, it's just the mate in 1 with rook takes h6 checkmate. So that was really brutal how the king wriggled to c2, navigated past all the tricks, and the central pieces, actually the pieces are quite central here. You can see that they're making threats on both sides of the board actually. So by centralizing, he was, yeah, the opportunity to make threats is magnified with central pieces. And it's black's king safety, which is worse than white's. Well, very significantly. I don't know if this trick had any merit. If white didn't even play that, is white just winning anyway? If he played queen f4, white's winning anyway. I don't think this is not too good. Whatever happens, this is not too good for black by this point. It looks to be losing anyway. But this is probably the most efficient. It's a forced mate in 6. It's a forced mate in 6. Okay, yeah. So some interesting games there. So that was a classic. So Marshall preparing this, Marshall Gambit, this early version, and still refuted. So, but yeah, Capablanca could navigate through the complications and consolidate his position, put his king in a very safe place, and centralize his pieces and counterattack in the end. So yeah, there's some instructive points, I think, in these games. I hope you enjoyed them. All likes appreciated. If you want to like the video, likes appreciated. Hope you enjoyed it. Quick poll: 1 fun, 10 boring. Hope you found it a bit of fun this session. Having a look at, so you had 2 bonus games because I wanted to put George Thomas in context as well. So we had a look at 5 games in total tonight. And okay, I think that's it. See you next week. Thanks very much.